Thanks for having me, everyone. It's an honor to get to be here, sit with you anytime, but especially this week, I'm feeling in the reeling from the horrific events of the last few days. Just feeling very grateful for my practice and for getting to practice in community. Feels like if there's ever a time to get to tend to our breath and to our hearts, it's right now. So grateful to be here. I want to start with a nigun, just by way of transition. And as I'm singing, feel free to start to slowly transition from where you were to where you are right now. So out of open tabs and news and texts and into this space. So welcome again. And if you're curious later to learn more about that tune, just putting something in the chat where you can find it. So there's a Hasidic teaching that's attributed to the Baal Shem Tov that there are three ways to mourn. Mourn through tears, through silence, and through nigun. Through tears, through silence, and through nigun. So do you notice what these three things all have in common? They're all beyond words, all beyond language. There's a phrase I've been really feeling into since we heard the news on Shabbat. Maybe you've heard it too, maybe you've said it. There are no words. We say this when we're so emotionally overwhelmed that language seems to fail us. Usually there are no words is a sort of apology. We wish we had the words. We wish we could wordsmith the right thing because we want the comfort of language. Language makes the world legible to us. It's how we sort out reality. With words come concepts and stories and narratives that put a neat bow on our unruly experiences and feelings and the events of life. And so instead of having to actually feel into this unnamed heat in my chest or this bubbling sharpness in my throat, I get a label. I get words like sad And that orients me. I know what to do with sad. I've had sad before. I have stories about sad. And that can be very skillful. But there's also a freedom in the wildness of no words. In the field of no words, we can be with things exactly as they are. We can ride the waves of experience without needing to control it. There's no pressure to wrap our minds around what's happening, because in silence, we wisely know we can't. And we let go of some of the grasping there. And all we can do is kind of be with. So I was thinking these last few days about the way that our meditation practice is a beautiful place to experiment with no words, with being without words, to just show up how we are without turning away and without figuring it out. We're about to sit, but before we do, I'll just offer one more teaching that comes to mind. There's a part in Job that comes to mind where Job's friends hear about all these terrible things that have happened to him, and eventually they come to just be with him in silence. And the verse says, they sat with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights. None spoke a word to him, for they saw how very great was his suffering. Right? So sometimes if we can sit with ourselves in silence, or sit with each other in silence, we meet loss with this something bigger than words, with a clear mind and an open heart and no words. So I invite you into this no words relief, this exhale. Not the idea of exhaling or the word exhale, but just so we'll be here in the expansiveness of silence. We'll meet the overwhelm with silence. This silence is spacious. It is holy. It contains all. Or in the words of Psalm 65, Lecha dumya tehila Elokim. For you, silence is praise, God. So we'll sit together. And we'll start to find whatever comfortable enough seat you can take. And just letting the body settle. Like water poured into a glass starts to settle, slowly, slowly. The face might soften. The space between the eyes might soften. This next breath received in a soft belly. Not rushing to have any sort of kind of experience, but just exhaling. And you might notice the attention gravitate towards this breath. And to these waves of breathing that happen all on their own without any encouragement or forcing, controlling. Just softening and softening. Zen teacher John Tarrant says, attention is the most basic form of love. See if you can offer some love to the breath. It's this soft, loving attention. Seeing how close you can get to the breath, how intimate you can get with the real experience of this breath now. Shallow or deep, quick or slow, this breath has an intelligence. Give it some love in this most basic form of attention. As difficulties, so-called distractions, challenges arise, and they will arise, you can give them a little taste of this loving attention. Yes, this too. And then come right back to the expansiveness of breathing, the expansiveness of no words. We'll sit together like this. For you, silence is praise. Poet Marcia Falk writes, silence. What do we hear when we let it settle in us? You might start to close your sit with a few deep breaths. Seeing if the momentum of our collective practice can be continuous with the next moments. And I'll close with a poem. This is Allow by Dana Falls. There is no controlling life. Try corralling a lightning bolt, containing a tornado. Dam a stream and it will create a new channel. Resist and the tide will sweep you off your feet. Allow and grace will carry you to higher ground. The only safety lies in letting it all in, the wild and the weak, fear, fantasies, failures, and success. When loss rips off the doors of the heart, or sadness veils your vision with despair, practice becomes simply bearing the truth. In the choice to let go of your known way of being, the whole world is revealed to your new eyes.
Thank you so much, Chloe, for that beautiful practice. I invite you to stay for a few minutes after the top of the hour, where we can have a chance to reflect together and offer questions and responses. In the meantime, we also now use this time always for giving those who are saying Kaddish, the prayer for morning, a chance to do so. You're welcome in the chat to put in the names of anyone you're holding in mind or heart. I'll also say before we close as well that we'll say Kaddish, but also that we're offering prayers for the return of captives as well, knowing that there are dozens or over 100 Israelis who are being held captive, and pray for their speedy and healthy return to their homes. We'll put the text of the Kaddish up on the screen, and you are welcome to unmute and join me in reciting Kaddish. Gadol Kadash Shnei Rabba Hamad
Dibra
Yavir
Perute,
Amen.
Yamli,
Yechon
Yechon
V'Chaye B'Chol Beit
Israel, Olav Isman Faret, Amen.
Yishmei Rabba
Barach V'Olam,
Barach
Ba'ar
Shavach
V'Yit
Ar
Romam V'Yit
Yitamam
Naseh,
Yitnaseh
Ar V'Yit Alev V'Yit
Hadar
Alal Shemei
Yitalev Yitalal Shmei Rashai
Shira,
Mikol Birchata V'Shirata
Nechamata Da'arim,
Nechamata Da'aran Da'alma
Ishlama Rabban Ishaya,
Marabba
Im Aleinu
Shmaya V'Chaim
Yisrael,
Aleinu V'Al Yisrael Aseh
Chia
Shalom
Aseh
Aleinu
Shalom,
Aseh
Aleinu
Shalom
Yisrael,
Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Al Kol Yoshrei Tevel V'Yimru Amen.
Amen.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, so thank you. Again, and if you can stay around, please do. If you need to leave, we say Tzedchem L'Shalom, farewell, and hope you'll join us back here tomorrow. And Chloe, we'll bring Chloe back up. There we go. She can unmute. So thank you so much for that beautiful teaching and just reflection on silence. And even the language of Kaddish, I was thinking to myself, right, that actually the words of Kaddish, the translation is La'ela, beyond, we call birchata v'shirata, but beyond all the forms of words that we offer, we're not able to articulate. Even when we say we're articulating, we're not really able to articulate what it is we're feeling. And so I just really appreciated your holding that space for us to be quiet together, which oftentimes we're in our culture, I think we're told that oh, it's quiet, so that means nothing's happening. Actually, much more happens in the quiet often than in the language. So thank you. And I would love to hear, there's a lot of gratitude coming in on the chat, and would love to hear about just what came up for you, folks who were with us during the sit just now. I'll say for me personally, I had a chance this morning finally. I try to start my day with a sit, of 20 or 30 minutes in the kitchen when I get up early enough. I'm up at about 5:30 and can have my coffee and nobody else is awake. And the last couple of mornings, it's been really, really hard. And I think, like many people, just was exhausted. I could feel the exhaustion in my face, and carrying that, and just the ability to sit and be quiet and be present with my own body and thoughts, and just sort of reconnect with myself and the world was so restorative, and so important. And I'm feeling a huge difference just in my own, how I'm showing up today than how I have in the last 48 or 72 hours. And so I wonder for you, just how you found even this practice just now, or you're in your more private practice, how what effect that
Mm.
this kind of dwelling in, abiding in quiet or in silence can have for you personally.
Yeah, I for me, there's really, it takes some courage to go beyond words. There's some like fearlessness there of to be in the wilderness of like outside of concepts, outside of explaining. But it I think it's one of the reasons why I love retreat so much is this feeling of oh, I don't have to explain anything to anyone about, no one asks me, how are you? And then I have to come up with something. No one asks me what's alive on your mind. Like there's some just real ease in the letting go of explaining to myself or others what is happening and just being with what's happening. And especially these last few days where I'm receiving so many like statements from organizations, which are very useful, and consuming so much news, also important. But of course, it like prompts me to think, oh, well, what do I think, and how am I explaining this, and what am I, and how can I package it in a statement to myself so that I can kind of domesticate experience. And actually, there's some real ease in being with what's beyond words, because there's so much La'ela.
Yeah, there's a phrase in a passage in the Talmud that I remember. Forget what Masechet it's in, but it's always been, since I learned it many years ago, it's been sort of hanging in there. Sama de kula mashtuka, that silence is a balm for everything, right? That silence has healing power, and I think that there's a certain sort of corrective that we almost have to, we have to embrace that as it's countercultural, I think, within Judaism, or in the Judaism that a lot of us have grown up in, where, first of all, we are such a language-oriented people. We love language. The world is created through language. Torah is language, right? I mean, the world was created through language. And I think also in the wake of the Shoah, right, that silence, especially Elie Wiesel taught, that kind of silence, a lot of us grew up with silence as complicity, not to say anything. And I think if Elie Wiesel were alive and we're here, who was a chassid through and through, I think he would have appreciated. No, there are different types of silence, right? And that there is a healing and a generative and a restorative kind of silence, and then there is an emptying and degrading kind of, an absence. There's a silence of presence maybe, and a silence of absence, and this is very much a silence of presence, right?
Yeah,
and I think it might be useful to distinguish between those two.
That's really, helpful nuance. I think the mystics are like always seem to know in many traditions that words are problematic and limiting to the greatest truths, right? Like God being, Norman Fisher says, God is the ultimate word, but kind of something, I think it goes beyond the grandness of God, which we put tons of fences around in order to honor the wisdom and power there. But I think if there's God in each moment and God in each experience, then perhaps there are times for kind of Yud-K, Vav-K-ing everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think that's true, that there's also it's a countercultural trend in our tradition for many reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. There's a few questions that come in. I see here. So one is Sandy. I see you asked. Could I just update about our teachers who are in Israel? So we've been in touch with everybody. Thank God. Right now, everybody is physically safe, and that includes. I think some, I'm bringing to mind. Actually, I don't want to name any names because I'm going to leave someone out, and so I don't want to do that. I do know that Daniel's Raphael Silverstein, who is he's on the docket to be leading tomorrow, and haven't gotten a cancellation from him yet. So hopefully he's going to be leading tomorrow. I know that Mira Weil has been leading SITS as well through her own initiative. Yiska Smith, I know I've heard from James Jacobson, Mizels, we've heard from. So as far as we know, thank God everybody is physically okay. Nobody is okay, obviously, but and then Rana asked a question, for those moments when I seek words, are there any particular psalms that you might suggest or any other writing? Yeah, so we could come up with a few greatest hits. I don't know, Chloe, if there are words that you go to that are particularly helpful to you.
I love Pirkei Avot, silence is a fence around wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And the phrase that I was repeating during this sit comes from Psalm 65. I don't know. Yeah, Rav Josh.
Yeah, I some of the standard ones that get recited in this time. Psalm 121, right? Lift up my eyes, is kind of a classic. I would actually say also, we just finished the liturgical recitation of Psalm 27, the David Adonai Ori, that the Holy One is my light and salvation, and there's a lot in there. I would also say, again, just amazingly, one of the real, I don't want to call it blessings, but just I'm not sure what to call it. One of the things, I don't have a word yet, Chloe, right? But one of the things about all of this unfolding over a holiday was, getting this news, and I got the news literally like right before we were saying Hallel in Shul on Shabbat. And so the words of Hallel took on a whole new meaning. When you look at the Psalms that are in Hallel, the late 1 teens, but around salvation and, min hametza karati b'merchavya, right? That I called out to you from the constraint, from constriction, and you answered me in expansiveness, and the whole rest of that, in these moments can be extremely, extremely comforting. So, and there's a lot of wisdom in that, not particularly about, obviously that's not about silence, but that's about, words that I found can be very helpful.
Yeah. For one more that comes to mind, Rav James, I've heard teach, I think you mentioned this, but Esa Einai, I've heard him teach, so Esa Einai El Heharim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri, from where does my help come? Me'ayin, from where? But he sometimes teaches from ayin, from nothingness, or from zero, or from God, or from, so something about God and nothing and silence being intertwined.
I also, I also think of, like, there's the classic Mary Oliver poem on praying that is always in the back of my mind, but that this isn't a contest but a doorway into thanks and a silence in which another voice may speak. It's her short little poem called Praying, but that notion of that actually prayer is a silence in which another voice may speak, I think is such a powerful image, and is also, I find, very comforting. And yeah, pick up Mary Oliver, pick up John O'Donohue, pick up, do your go-tos, Thich Nhat Hanh, if you want, not from the Jewish canon, from our other teachers too, Pima Chodron, and they're all on my coffee table right now. So there's a few other comments that have come in, and just always really appreciate, Nancy, I really appreciate your comment here that it takes practice to sit and experience what is happening in order to name what it is, which is not the same thing as making stories. Yeah, that's a really helpful distinction. Really helpful. I would just say, I would say one more thing is just, there was a social media post I saw this morning that I reposted that was originally in Hebrew by a psychologist, an Israeli psychologist, who was just reminding folks in terms of self-care that so many people, and I'm guilty of this too, is you can get into the doom scrolling and just constantly looking for the latest news, and like people I talk to, constantly like checking CNN or whatever, and we do that. I'll speak for myself. I do that. When I'm doing that, often it is because I have this feeling of like total lack of control, and it's a way to assert a little bit some feeling that there's some control. Oh, I'm checking, I'm taking an action, and therefore there's going to be something new. But in fact, it for me anyway, and it may be true for you, it feeds just more pizur hanefesh, more sense of like myself just being diffused and dispersed and not centered, and it's illusory, right? It's chasing a mirage. There's no control there. And in fact, what's much more helpful to me, I was saying to you early, Chloe, that just the chance to actually sit and be still and show up with myself and sort of reconnect is far more helpful to being able to be here for myself and others. So I think for all of us, just practicing a little more self-care and a little more mindfulness and a little less speech. It doesn't have to be about reading or about saying anything on your Facebook or Twitter or wherever, So Chloe, any last words just that you might want to share as we close out?
I can say that it's hard to do alone, just stating the obvious. So that I feel like buoyed by the momentum of everyone's practice, and just encouraging folks to, as it's possible, continue to sit with others virtually or together in person.
Yeah, totally. I'm into that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Chloe. It's great to have you here. Thank you, everybody, for showing up today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time channel. And until then, just know that we're all traveling this road together, and glad to be able to be with you.